Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you're playing characters Mannix, Kalesta, Gillian, George, or Theron, go away. This is not meant for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening, although we'll be going tonight, Thursday night. More on that in a second. Catch up on previous episodes of my YouTube page, as well as read weekly session recaps at RogueWatson.com. If you'd like to support the channel, check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shout out to Platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Charles, and Crazy Pat. And Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marcos Dude, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Alxi, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. So as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a special makeup session this week on Thursday. I know during the Monday update video I told patrons that this would be a normal schedule. Apparently it is not, as I got word, I believe, later that day that some of us would not be able to attend on Friday. So we're going to be doing we'll be going with our normal start time, which is 9 p.m.-ish Central U.S. time tonight, Thursday. No Friday show. We're going Thursday this week. Most likely also going Thursday next week. I know for sure we won't be going on Friday next week because I will not be here. We're going to be out of town at the lake next week. It's summertime. Everybody's doing like summer vacation things. So, you know, this stuff's going to start coming up. We've been kind of lucky so far that none of it has interrupted D&D play too much, but now that we are especially going towards the kind of Independence Day weekend at the beginning of July, end of June section, then these things are going to come up. So that is the schedule. I'll put more stuff out there for social media, but we are going to be going tonight instead of tomorrow for this week's session, which means I've got less time to prepare and plan for things. Thankfully, the players did not make it nearly as far into Jahaka Anchorage as I expected. Hello, Tiny. In fact, all of last session was one single battle, and this has happened for a couple of sessions now. I feel like we've had several sessions that were basically just one big 3-hour long battle, and a lot of times I don't necessarily expect it to go that long. And this was one of those times. When I planned this encounter, I did not at all expect it to be this challenging and harrowing for the players. This was probably the single most difficult encounter my players have had for the entire campaign. They are level 5. They were essentially fighting... I think I wrote this down somewhere, but I don't remember where I put that. But it might have been in the... actually, probably in the recap notes, I wrote down exactly how many they were fighting. But it was like half a dozen bandit stat blocks, you know, the pirates, but essentially they're bandits. I think 4 thugs, Captain Laska Lars, who's a bandit captain, the priest, who, by the way, got one-shotted by Kalesta, so didn't do anything, and the gladiator first mate, which that one was very interesting because the gladiator, which I didn't really look twice at, is a fucking CR5 monster. He's got 3 melee attacks, he's got high AC, he's got over 100 hit points. That's pretty crazy. And what mattered in this fight so much, what really dictated the entire cadence of how this played out, was... And I didn't even necessarily win initiative there. It was just kind of all, you know, throughout. So they were able to do things like Kalesta was able to take out that priest very early, which is good. Usually want to take out the spellcaster, but the spellcaster was not the hardest one here. It was that freaking half-orc gladiator monster. I was able to almost down Gillian in that first round. I think I hit with all 3 attacks, put her down to like 10% hit points, which meant instead of Gillian being able to cast like Sleep or Shatter or some kind of devastating AoE that would have taken down, frankly, half this room, she instead had to go into full like flight mode. I believe she cast Invisibility, ran away, and spent basically, I think, 2 rounds just trying to heal herself. And that kind of was set the whole tone for the fight, because from that point, I think she was having to use most of her spells as heals, as was Theron eventually. He was having to cast his spells as healing spells, which I had forgotten I'd actually burned through, because so often Theron has 2 wild shapes for all these big encounters, but he had actually used one of his wild shapes in the ship encounter with Alsariak, and that was the same day as these events, because that ship was right outside. So he had actually burned through one of his wild shapes. He only had one left, and he had burned through pretty much all of his charges of his Thorn Staff by casting that Thorn Wall in that ship fight. So they weren't fully rested. They had burned through a few things, but holy crap! When I was running this, like from that opening moment when that half orc did so much damage to Gillian, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be kind of exciting now. And then it just got more and more crazy from there. The way the players themselves kind of separated a little bit, ended up fighting these different micro battles, which is always really fun. The fact that a lot of these pirates with like 10 hit points were able to just sit back there and plink them with crossbows, and it reminded me of that fight with the Flaming Fist, where for some reason my dice were just on fire, and that makes such a big deal with the balance of D&D. It's so hard to create that tension because it is a dice-based game. You really don't know which way they're gonna, so much can hinge on just a single saving throw or an attack roll or a crit or something, and I was nailing all of my hits. It was really crazy and devastating for the players. I mean, I was getting some crits off. I was nailing with all these little +3 and +4 attacks, even against the party members who have like 17 in AC and 17 or 18 armor class. Like statistically, I should not be nailing all those shots, and I was for almost max damage for a lot of times. It was really crazy and really made this entire adventure a lot more challenging for the players. I agree, Lumpy. I was also on the edge of my seat, frankly, especially when it wasn't until I think at one point Mannix and Theron were outside rolling death saves, and I think Mannix literally ended up rolling. Well, he did. He rolled 3, didn't he? Because he had 3 successes in a row, followed by a 1. So literally, we had a player down for 3 rounds rolling death saves, which is nuts. And hilarious, I forgot about the Deinonychus. Hilariously, that one pet Deinonychus survived past like everything else. He doesn't have a lot of hit points, but because there were so many units on the field, I could get away with using a lot of creatures that I would have thought would have died really quickly. But the players were on their heels for so long. I mean, they had to spend all of their spells and a lot of actions and things just healing and grouping up and moving around. I mean, it was really crazy. I did love Mannix's hilarious antics of fleeing into the kitchen and then trying to set up like a little illusion thing, and then Gillian trying to get health potions off of everybody. Like, that made it really fun. I really like it when the players do more than just attack, rinse, repeat. I love it when they think outside the box and they do kind of fun things. Whether that's Theron summoning, apes in the middle of every table, or Mannix running into a room and casting illusion, or people diving behind the bar and setting alcohol on fire. Like, all of that was a lot of fun. And what's interesting here is the pirates are not like mindless zombies or something. And so much of what the players have had to fight so far have been creatures that aren't that don't use like tactics, I guess. And even when they're fighting like on a pirate ship or something, they can only use so many tactics, and I try to use them. But here, for example, the pirates knew to lock down any spellcasters. So obviously, the first mate went after Gillian as early as he could until she went invisible, and then they turned on Theron because they saw him casting, those conjure animal spells, and they were able to break his concentration for one of them. But the one thing that worked really, really well for the players, and frankly I think is what turned the tide, is that Theron's Allosaurus stuck around for almost the entire length of the battle. Once he summoned his second conjure animal spell, that Allosaurus nailed almost all of its attacks. Ironically, the one I had Theron roll missed. And it absorbed a ton of hit points. I kept trying to attack Theron and break his concentration. Never could. He's got a really high con saving throw. Which is good for an offensive kind of melee-focused druid. And it was able to tank. I mean, it comes in at like 50 hit points, and by the time it finally disappeared, only due to Theron actually going down. Never to break his concentration, I had to render him unconscious. It had like 5 hit points left. So that Allosaurus did fucking work for the players in terms of keeping them alive and mitigating a lot of that damage. But even then, we had Mannix, Theron, and George go down in a single fight. According to my notes, which I'm a nerd about notes and I keep track of all these things, so I think it's just fun to keep track throughout all our campaigns over the years. The last time we had 3 players go down in a single combat, in a single session, and I believe it was a single combat encounter, was session 2 of Storm King's Thunder. And we were all level 1. And it's pretty easy to render a level 1 player character to 0 hit points. Not very easy once they start having 30, 40, and 50 hit points, as they do here. So this is pretty much unprecedented for this level of play. Early tier 2 to have so many players go down, and frankly almost brought Gillian down too. She was really low, and Kaleta was down to like 20 something hit points, which is probably just about as low as she's gotten. I've still never I've never brought Kaleta down for the entire campaign. I tried my damnedest in this one. This is the closest we've come to a total party wipe. And what's interesting here is this is not a game over situation, because these are pirates. These aren't like monstrous, zombies or killer plants or something that would just devour the characters. They would have, stripped them of all their things and thrown them in the prison near Roka until they figured out kind of what to do with them and if they're worth anything for ransom. So it would have created an entirely different dynamic for the adventure going forward. I don't think I was ever in full danger of thinking this was going to be a total party wipe. I don't recall any situation where I fudged the rolls. You might have to roll back the tape and check, but I don't think I ever actually held up in any way. I mean, there might have been a situation where I spread out the damage a little bit. I tend to do that regardless in any fight instead of ganging up on one person. But even then, I feel like I actually did a pretty decent job of ganging up on specific people, especially with the half-orc using all 3 of his attacks on one person, whereas normally if somebody has a multi-attack, if it's a strong enemy, I like to spread that damage out, and how that helps the players too, because it's just kind of helps balance it in their favor a little bit, and I'm always doing that. But here, the half-orc was definitely trying to take people down, and I loved the combo of him doing his shield bash and then gaining advantage on his other 2 attacks. I thought that was a really cool, fun combo to use and easy for the DM to pull off. But I don't think at any point I was pulling my punches. But on the other hand, I never expected this to be a total party wipe, really at any point, even when multiple people were going down, because I think by the time that Allosaurus disappeared, Theron went down, and Mannix was down, I think Kaleta had basically joined the fight against the half-orc, and he was finally almost dead, and at that point I think the others were kind of cleaning up the rest. So it felt like that battle was starting to turn the tide, even though 2 of the players were down. George been brought back up. There was a funny moment where I almost fudged the roll with George. At one point, the half-orc had 7 hit points left, and George did 6 damage and just tried to look at his stuff, and he had nothing left. I mean, he used all of his superiority dice, all of his action surges, everything, and he couldn't do any more damage. And normally, if somebody's that close, I would probably give it to him, give him that kill. But fuck it, like, this fight was already so fun and intense, so I left him with 1 hit point left. And due to the fact that 2 of the players were down and just had to deal with their own things, nobody could even go up there and slap him again to down him. So I got another turn off with the half-orc, and that was the one where I felt like I had my chance to actually down Kaleta for the first time all campaign, and then I missed all 3 attacks, which was hilariously appropriate because the half-orc was so damaged and fucked up by then, so it was just blood in his eyes and just couldn't strike. So I thought that was really funny the way my dice finally left me at the end. But I would have been sweating bullets had, for example, Mannix been rolling failed death saves. I think that would have been really interesting and might have changed the dynamic of the party composition. Like, had Mannix been at 2 failed death saves, is anybody going to try to just run over there and stabilize him? I would hope so. I would hope they not let him die just because they want to try to take out these pirates in the middle. So that might have changed things. Instead, he was able to keep up with it. Theron did roll 1 failure, but then I believe at that point, I think Gillian was able to come out and heal him, or somebody healed him to where he was able to, maybe Kaleta. I think Kaleta actually shoved a potion down his throat. So at that point, they were kind of wrapping up everything. But thankfully, Mannix was able to get enough death saves to pop him back up. He was the only one, I believe, that suffered a lingering injury, too. Both Theron and George made it because they have good con saves. So our rule is if you reach 0 hit points, you suffer a lasting injury which well, if you reach 0 hit points, you trigger a Constitution saving throw first. It's a DC 15. If you fail that saving throw, then you suffer a lingering injury. So you actually have a chance to not even suffer it if your Constitution is good. And I'm realizing now that's been our house rule for as long as we've done D&D, I think. But I'm realizing now that definitely puts a big advantage on characters who happen to be, Constitution heavy, whereas the characters who are probably going down more often are the ones that don't have much Constitution, and thus they will be getting more lingering injuries. So maybe it should have been as soon as you reach 0, you gain a lingering injury. Kind of similar to the way like Pillars of Eternity does it, where you, if you go down, you get basically a semi-permanent negative debuff, which is kind of similar to how we do it, which is actually taken from the Dungeon Master's Guidebook. And I believe I use pretty much the same stuff, like crippled limbs or concussions or things that essentially give you disadvantage. And normally you can just heal that, at the nearest town. But as I've mentioned before, in Tomb of Annihilation, not a whole lot of safe towns and local temples to go heal at. So that creates a much more interesting dynamic when these lingering injuries truly linger for a long time, to where I believe it's a restoration spell they have to use. I don't even know if at this point they'll be able to cure it, but surely I'll have to come up with some way for them to cure it in the future. I hate to leave him with... I mean, he had that one eye for a long time, which technically replaced with a false one. Let's see, I think it's all the way at the bottom. It's a greater restoration. It's the equivalent of greater restoration, worth 450 gold pieces. So maybe they could find like a scroll at some point that's got greater restoration on it, that they could try to cast to heal it. But it'll be a while that poor Mannix will have to use his backup one-handed crossbow. It's unfortunate because with his low hit points and his low con, he's going to be the most the one that's going to suffer from those lingering injuries more than anyone else, because for some reason this party, in particular, across the board, like even Kaleta, who's a rogue, has like an 18 con. Like, it's really crazy how much health and defense I think 3 out of the 5 party members have. Hello, Crazy Pat. So yeah, this fight was absolutely nuts. I did have Laska Lars disappear. That was kind of always my plan. When I initially had it planned out, I assumed Laska Lars would be on his last legs and have to disappear as an escape method to keep him alive. Instead, he was at full health. They never actually attacked the captain, which is interesting because usually PCs always go after the boss, because the boss usually has the deadliest attacks. Here, the captain actually isn't the deadliest attacks. It's his monstrous first mate, and they did a good job of ganging up on him when they could. So instead, the captain was able to escape. I wish flavor-wise, I guess I could have just done this as a DM. He could teleport multiple people, because it did seem weird that he was like, all right, lads, let's get out of here. What I should have done is, when I attacked, I think I had another round left, and I screwed this up. I think I had everybody like shoot their crossbows. I should have had them shoot their crossbows and then leave. They shouldn't have just stuck around for that round. I just wasn't thinking at that point. After Laska Lars had left, they could have still gotten an attack off, like a ranged attack, and then all left before hopefully Kaleta reached them, or even while Kaleta reached them, had them just leave. And that would have made it more interesting, because then the players might have followed them, and then they might have seen Laska Lars on the ship, because here is what is going to happen in tonight's session. Again, going tonight, not tomorrow. Laska Lars used his Cape of the Mountebank to teleport back to his ship, the Sturge, which is the one in the dock, which unfortunately these ships are pasted on the map, so I can't actually get rid of them. But he teleported there, and then his plan is to just leave, because he knows... the players just carved through like 90% of his crew. He's got just a skeleton crew left. So at this point, he's just going to get on his ship and leave and try to maybe fight them when he's got an advantage on the ship, or just leave them after a while and, I don't know, try to meet up with the other pirates, consolidate their efforts, do something to maybe come back at the players for revenge. So if the players... And these pirates are gone. Most likely, after a big fight, the players need to rest. If they rest, then Laska Lars is gone. It's going to take him a while to leave, but it's not going to take him an hour to, pull up the anchor and set sail and get the hell out of Dodge. So, if the players short rest in here, and more than likely they will because they've got nothing left, they will come out and find no ship here. Unfortunately, I can't. Let's see, what I could do is maybe do some kind of print screen shenanigans and literally cover this with water, and it would look kind of garbagey, but that might work. Or just say, hey, this ship's not here. Because Laska Lars left. He escaped, he got his remaining crew, and has left, and is now what is one of the DM's favorite tools, which is a reoccurring villain. They've already met Laska Lars once, I believe it was in Session 2, and this was their second encounter with him, and now he escaped and could set up a potential third encounter down the road, or down the sea, as it were. That means characters have no ship. They're in the Anchorage with no ship. Now, there's pretty much no... What I expect to happen next session, players are going to rest. They're going to wake up. They're going to find Laska Lars gone and the ship gone. They can still explore Jahaka Anchorage, which consists of basically this warehouse up here. All these bunks and everything are going to be empty. The warehouse will be unlocked via the key from one of the pirate captains. They'll walk in. Most likely they're not wearing the eye patches they found in the tavern. The tavern has a little bit of loot in it. I'll just have them find that chest. They'll see the eye patches, but they'll probably not put two and two together. That maybe I can telegraph the fact that if one of them puts on an eye patch for funsies and they walk through first, then nothing happens. But as soon as somebody walks in without an eye patch, all of these flying swords are going to animate and attack. So there is one more combat, which, depending on how the characters short rest and how many spell slots they've gone through, this could be a slightly more challenging battle, because they could be still fairly wounded and damaged from that. Otherwise, they'll be able to loot this warehouse, which doesn't have a whole lot going for it. I mean, it's mainly just money, which I haven't decided. I don't think I'm going to put any magic items in here. I haven't quite decided. Mainly, the magic item that they wanted to get was off Captain Laska Lars, which is that cool teleporting cloak. Let's see, go to my notes. Where is the warehouse? The warehouse has... I didn't write how much the warehouse has. How much does the warehouse have? Jahaka Anchorage, where are you? I think it's got a bunch of money and some scrolls. Okay, I wrote down I was going to replace the scrolls with Hold Person and Sleet Storm. They seemed more exciting than Knock and the Tiny Hut, which obviously Gillian's already got the Tiny Hut. The other thing they'll be able to do is rescue Roka from the prison, and he's going to be, obviously, he can tell them that Laska Lars teleported back, because he can easily see. Laska Lars appeared on the ship in a poof of, smoke, and set sail not too long ago. But there are no ships here, because they told Kaleta, the first mate of the Dragon Fang, to also leave. Now, as a DM, I have to decide, does Kaleta's loyalty lie with the players, or is she still a pirate at heart? So in other words, once she leaves, she was under no obligation to swing back and pick up the PCs. So I've created an interesting situation here where the PCs have essentially defeated 3 pirate captains, although leaving 1 captain alive with a small amount of crew, and ending up with 0 ships. And it was very difficult for the players. It was not an easy way, especially because I basically closed them off from Port Nine Zaru. It was not an easy way for them to hang on to any one of these ships necessarily. But they just didn't put in any assurances like players usually do in terms of trying to keep possession of something. There just wasn't any... They didn't try to do anything like that. Instead, they kind of put their trust... They just thought that as soon as they beat these pirates were just swore loyalty to them or something. And they're pirates. It's not really what they do. So I would argue that Kaleta is not loyal to the players. In point of fact, it's very likely that Kaleta would go after the Brazen Pegasus because some of her crew were left on there. So maybe they had some kind of plan where Kaleta with the Dragon Fang could go attack the Brazen Pegasus, which is parked outside of the Temple Palace that the player should go to next. That's also in Jahaka Bay. And try to attack the Pegasus and loot or sink that ship in some way. So the players could come across that as a scenario. However, what I've kind of done is beached them. And I just mentioned last week that I don't really want them to go through a jungle crawl again, but as a DM I can just hand wave a lot of that away. So, they'll finish up their stuff in Jahaka Anchorage. We'll do the flying sword thing in the warehouse. We'll meet up with Roka. Roka will be very, mostly upset that the players kind of killed everyone here, because he was wanting to try to come up with some kind of business deal, gangster business deal with the pirates of Chult, because he's part of the Zentarum. So he'll be a little bit upset about the fact, but given that he still knows where the Anchorage is, then maybe the Zentarum can just move in and use this location and become the new pirates. So he will be pleased at being rescued, I guess I should say, but ultimately a little disappointed that they couldn't come up with some kind of arrangement with the pirates and had to resort to just bloody violence. He will... I guess he would accompany the player, because he doesn't have a ship either, obviously. Would he accompany the players? I could have them find the sending stone in the warehouse, and the sending stone would allow him to contact the Zentarum. But obviously, it would take a week at least for anyone to come here. So I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any reason for Roka to not accompany the players, but his story arc is basically done at this point, so I don't have anything else for Roka planned to do. So maybe he would insist on staying behind, maybe in case any pirates showed up. He could be on the watchtower or something. He could try to sneak aboard a ship if they come. He could even get on this little rowboat and try to row out to somewhere. I don't see him necessarily wanting to accompany the players at this point, although he would be grateful. If they were very insistent, then maybe he could, but he doesn't really offer anything to the group story-wise at this point. It was just kind of a fun little random thread to put in Jahaka Anchorage here. But the other thing that can happen is the players don't rest, and instead they burst out of the doors and find Laska Lars on the ship. At which point they can absolutely go after him and solve a lot of those problems, and then actually gain the ship, which changes the dynamic completely. So a big difference in how the next session plays out depends on if the players short rest or if they just continue on and essentially battle almost no pirates here. There'll be mounted ballistas that the pirates could shoot at the players, and the players are very, very weakened at this point. But Laska Lars also got nothing. He's got no crew left. It's just him. He's got I think I put 3 pirates here. I could maybe add a thug or something on there just to have a little bit more. But he's really got almost nothing left, and he would pretty much surrender if the players come at him with any kind of show of force that they can use. But again, I would expect them to short rest after that big battle, and a short rest is an hour, so it matters a lot if the players do that or not. If they don't short rest, they can come out, find Laska Lars trying to escape, and then essentially catch him, defeat him, or capture him, which could be a difficult fight just because the players are so much weakened. But again, he's got not much on his end either. He's very weakened. And then they do have the ship, so then they can just take that ship directly to the Temple Palace, which is, I believe, just across the bay. And I could probably argue that would be in the same day, but I guess they could long rest in Jahaka Anchorage. I don't have any NPCs to dissuade them of that, but they wouldn't know Jahaka Anchorage was completely clear, so they wouldn't be able to I wouldn't let them long rest in the tavern itself. After that fight, they could short rest there, but they don't know what the rest of the they don't know if the place is still crawling with pirates or whatever. So they wouldn't be able to long rest until probably after they clear the warehouse, and hopefully at least talk to, Roka and everything. After they essentially beat Jahaka Anchorage, they would be allowed to long rest and then make their way to the bay. If they have the ship, then they can make it to the bay within a day, and I really need to decide if I'm going to have the Dragon Fang. So if they, a lot of this depends on if they can catch Laska Lars or not. If they don't catch Laska Lars, which I think is what's going to happen, I would assume, and I know it's dangerous as the DM to assume, I would assume the players will short rest, which means Laska Lars escapes. They come out, they find no ship there. They clear out Jahaka Anchorage, and then they would have to trek across the jungle, basically. Because I don't think you can take. Could they take little boats across the bay? I don't know if you could row. I don't think you could row boats. And you could row a boat across a lake or something, but this is still like 20 miles of water. That would take you a long time on a rowboat, and you couldn't really rest on a fucking rowboat. So no, you can't take the rowboats across. Actually, it'd be more like 40 miles. They would have to huff it across the jungle, which I've been hand-waving jungle crawling towards the end of our jungle excursion, especially after they finished Illunga and had the hut. Then they had very few encounters in the jungle. So it would be a similar deal here, where they could go across, and they would probably reach the temple area in maybe 3 days of jungle travel. What I could do, because for George's personal quest, he still has to fight a Commodon and a giant snake. And I need him to fight both of those before he reaches Omu, because when he reaches Omu, he'll get his final, the final culmination of his personal quest. So I could have a Commodon encounter as just like the one encounter they have between here and Jahaka Bay. I mean, it'll be one of those where they're just fully long rested, and hopefully it's just fun because it's a unique creature. Probably like a pair of Commodons, if not 3 of them. I'll have to look at the balance and see how many. I think they're pretty powerful, but so are the players. CR4, I want to say. They're like leopards with fucking like Medusa leopards, but instead of petrifying, they have a sleep attack they can do, or knocks everybody unconscious, although it's a pretty easy DC 12, and my players are very good at the con saving throw. Do get 2 multi-attacks. Low armor class, but pretty decent hit points. CR4. They could stealth them, so I could do a cool like raptor maneuver where, they see 2 of them and maybe like 1 or 2 more pounce on them or something in a surprise round. So that could be a possible encounter there. That would be, and again, I want to make, at this point, all the random encounters need to mean something. I don't want to just shove, you come across a bunch of zombies again or something for the umpteenth time. Like, they get it. And especially with the hut, like, there's just not much going on there. I don't think I would have the Steel Predator catch up to them here. That doesn't really interest me. Unless as an escape thing, like they see the ship and they see the Steel Predator behind them, and it's like catching up, and they have to get out to the water, but it won't go on the water or something, Essentially, I want them to always be like 1 step ahead of it if they can be. But if they reach Jahaka Bay on land, they can probably see the Brazen Pegasus maybe parked outside of it, and at that point I have to decide, is the Dragon Fang going to attack it? Which, if they travel on land, that means the Dragon Fang has probably already attacked it. And they've maybe already captured Ortome and Grig and Musharib and Hugh with the surviving crew, because without the players, they're able to kind of overpower them with the bigger ship, and still some crew left. So that could be an interesting scenario where the players can see that and have to deal with that in addition to dealing with the temple. There's almost a Indiana Jones maneuver I can pull where maybe for some reason the pirates all want to go in the temple ship, and they've got like their NPC prisoners there, but there might be too many moving parts, because I like to have the players explore explore this dungeon on their own too. Or the entire thing changes if the players have the ship. If they catch up to Laska Lars, they defeat him, they take the ship, and then now they've got the ship and can just go right across the bay, in which case they would probably intercept Kaleta and the Dragon Fang, and then it turns into a... If they have the Scourge, then Kaleta probably wouldn't even engage them. They would probably see them with the Scourge, and maybe even notice that the players are on there, and then it would not be a hostile encounter at that point. The Dragon Fang would either break off completely, or maybe try to even like wave to them and be like, hey, it's your buddies, kind of pirates thing. So maybe that doesn't even become a combat thing. So you can see the whole thing changes completely depending on what decision the players make. So unfortunately, I should have kind of asked the players, maybe tipping my hand a little too much, if they planned on resting or not, because that changes a lot of the story events and encounter events. Because if they catch Laska and have the ship, then I don't have to plan a jungle encounter at all, because they're not going to be in the jungle. But if they don't, then I do. So that's the situation I'm facing right now, is whether or not they catch Laska Lars or not. Or, as a DM, I can just have them catch Laska Lars anyway. I can say, well, you short rest, and Laska Lars is... and you see Laska Lars like exiting the bay, and maybe they all do like a big dramatic, like, in fact, let's go back to Anchorage and see what that looks like. Unfortunately, I can't move that map. This ship is glued onto the mesh as part of the map background art. I can't actually move this. So if I want to create a situation where it's actually moving, I'd probably have to put that pirate ship token back on the board, which I think I got rid of, unfortunately, and have it be like it's exiting the cove literally as they're waking up from their nap. And then if they want to just haul ass, rush over there, try to swim and catch up, that could be an interesting situation. I don't know what kind of tools the players have that would let them do that other than just dashing repeatedly. The rogues could get up there pretty quickly, but I don't think they actually have any kind of traversal magic spells that I'm aware of. Plus, they burned through a pretty good amount of spell slots. Theron only has 2 first-level spell slots left out of everything else. He went through a lot. Gillian has 3 level 1 spell slots. They all used all of their higher level slots for sure, but yeah, I don't think they have any traversal abilities, and Manic's only like a level 1. Wizard doesn't really have anything either. It's all utility. So, I don't know, other than just hauling ass, how they'd be able to catch up to Laska Lars, but that might be more interesting and give them a chance to catch up, to make that boat. Let's see, do I want to go and allow them to at least bypass? Is this on the map layer? Is. So maybe I'll give them a chance to catch up if they want. Kind of explain the fact that, again, assuming they short rest, that's too big, because otherwise I'm planning on a lot of contingencies here depending on what the players do. The captain could be on the ship and realize that he doesn't have the crew to sail, so the players might have to cooperate with him. Yeah, he definitely doesn't have much crew with him. So that would probably slow him down. He wouldn't be able to maybe set sail very quickly. Is that about the same size-ish? So maybe he's like slowly making his way out. This looks weird having the ship here, and this is like the same ship. But he'd be slowly making his way out of the cove, although he's not able to actually go very well. In fact, I need to put everything on here. So still, if they come out immediately, they don't rest at all, they can still catch him essentially flat-footed, to use a D&D term. They'll catch him on the ship still trying to set sail. If they rest for an hour, then maybe I'll let them catch him leaving the cove, but very, very slowly because it's very hard. He does not have the crew to really operate this ship very well. I mean, he's only got like 4 people or something. So that gives them a chance to catch up by, they'll have to still come up with some kind of fun method of swimming across or jumping on one of these boats and rowing like crazy. And that gives me a chance to then get a few shots off on them with the pirates. I can sit there and shoot them, put them in combat pretty much as soon as they exit the building. Which the nice thing is, round to round, I don't think the ship would actually move very far with only 6 seconds. But that would allow the pirates to then shoot at them. So yeah, I think I like that idea. I think even if they do short rest, Laska Lars' ship will be there. It'll just be in the process of leaving. And the players will probably want to catch him because that's their fucking boat. And that's their only ticket out of there. So they'll be able to catch him and defeat him. The problem is the players at that point really won't have much of a crew. Maybe that's where Roka will come in. Maybe I'll give Roka some sailing skills. And he can help operate this ship with the players, although they'll also be at a disadvantage because they really don't have much of any crew left, unless the Laska Lars crew manages to, these few pirates left manage to actually surrender, which they probably would, and then the players can obviously use them. So, and if anybody decides to swim, boom, sharks in the water. Reef sharks are going to be a problem. Stick a few over here just for funsies. Sharks aren't very strong, but the stupid token is gigantic. For the back. Reef sharks. So that could create a fun, interesting little fight right there. I don't see the need to roll hit points for all those. Alright, so I think that's what we're looking at for the Anchorage. Which is, we should be able to finish Jahaka Anchorage with the next session, because they'll meet up with Laska Lars. It's going to be a mini combat encounter. They should surrender fairly quickly once he realizes he can't really escape, and the players are still, at full force. Although they've drained, but still after a short rest, they'll be up on hit points. Which haven't had very many opportunities in this campaign where the players have to short rest and use all their hit points since making level 5. Because before that, obviously, they had to use it for because they couldn't long rest. But ever since they could long rest, every time they travel in dungeon in the jungle, they haven't had to really utilize the short rest thing much until until Dungrungalung, but actually I think they were level 4 for Dungrungalung, weren't they? Because I think they did all that level 4, and then they were level 5 after Illunga and just Heart of Uptow and Firefinger. So Firefinger would have been the other time I think they had to short rest and actually heal up. So they'll actually be a little bit drained of their resources, and then for that warehouse battle as well, they'll have a little encounter for that. They'll be able to save Roka, and then they'll be done with Jahaka Anchorage, and they can make their way onward to the temple, which is going to be a neat story location, kind of similar to Illunga, where I've baked in some story stuff in there, which is really fun. It is, as I've mentioned countless times before, but I'm always going to get comments on, where did you get this dungeon? Where did you get this map? It is from the Turtle package, which is an official Wizards of the Coast thing they put out for to tie into Tomb of Annihilation that added the Turtle race. And it added this one dungeon called Dangwaru, which is a palace, kind of Umberlee temple palace along the sea, which fits in perfectly with Gillian's backstory. Obviously, I created, or helped create Gillian's backstory partially based on this dungeon, because I thought it was just a really cool dungeon that fit that motif very, very well, which I think I did finally put in the dynamic lighting for it. So I was able to use the map that came with the Turtle package, but then I've had to obviously put in the doors and the dynamic lighting layers and the lighting, and I'll put in some tokens. I don't think I've put hardly any tokens on here. And it's not actually, it's a big dungeon, but it's not super combat heavy. Now, it is designed in the book for third or fourth level PCs. It says, at third level they'll probably have to short rest or maybe even retreat, and at fourth level they should be able to clear it out. My players are fifth level, which, given the power curve in D&D, fifth level is a big jump because they get access to third level spells and things. So I'm gonna have to scale up the enemies. Although I think the traps are already scaled pretty well. In fact, what I like about this dungeon is it's not necessarily crawling with enemies. It does have just a lot of cool exploration bits and a lot of really nice traps. There's like a statue here that if they touch it, it's a glyph of warding. There is a pool here that if they jack with this pool at all, they get transformed into a crab for 24 hours, which is pretty funny. The last time I had a lot of fun with polymorphing players as a trap was in Princes of the Apocalypse, where there was a statue in the middle of this cave section where literally half of them ended up turning into oozes, which was pretty funny, and they had to use I think a genie wish to heal themselves of it, which just because they had the aid of a genie, which was man, I love that campaign. But anyway, that could be a really funny situation. Hopefully, we make it funny, where if anybody like drinks the water or something, they get transformed into a crab. But I want to do the thing similar to Illunga, where they see kind of ghostly images of events that have happened in the past, which is a very easy to use kind of storytelling conceit when you don't have, video games a lot of times use like the audio books or the journals, but they do this as well, usually in horror games. And this is kind of going to be not necessarily a horror theme or area, but definitely has a divine presence that might create this kind of, whatever. I don't have to explain it. It's just you see like ghostly images of things that happened in the past, and they'll be able to learn the Gillian's past, that she was a Triton envoy along with her brother, who were diplomats to the forces, this temple ship of Umberlee, because there was the Kraken from our Storm King's Thunder campaign that they were at war with, and they were on this temple ship, and then the Umberlee faction turned on their envoy, murdered them all, and her and her brother tried to escape, but her brother was caught, and she was able to escape. This happened about, I think I said, a decade ago. And then she lost sight of the ship and was never able to find it, and she came to Chult, actually, after the war ended, now trying to find this ship and her brother. What happened, which they will learn through the course of events here, is that the brother, Gillian's brother, and the head priestess fell in love. They actually fraternized, and she initially used it to, she essentially used him initially to get in and assassinate the rest of the diplomats, and he was either unwitting to that or maybe made the deal but could spare him and his sister, as kind of a thing. So, but what happened is she actually really did end up falling for him. So she was cursed by Umberlee because of that, because Umberlee doesn't want anybody fraternizing with Tritons that were battling them, and she causes the entire temple ship to crash into the side of Chult here. And in doing so, the priestess wants to win favor back to Umberlee, so she constructs, out of the remains of their temple ship, her and her surviving followers, and I'm picturing this big like cruise ship thing, tear apart the ship and build this grand palace to Umberlee, with all the trappings and everything. And then Umberlee does bestow her favor, but basically tells the priestess, through prayer and whatever, that she has to fully recommit herself to Umberlee and kill Gillian's brother. And she finally does, and her powers are restored, but she is like malformed and twisted. And I think I'm going to use the Kraken Priest stat block for that, which is a cool CR5 kind of ocean-themed spellcaster that seems appropriate. And that will be the final boss fight, is against the this cleric priestess whom Gillian knows, but is now kind of a monster. And she's got like Chules with her. And the actual final battle will involve this cool giant Kraken statue that I think I'm going to use legendary actions that she can animate the tentacles. This is actually written in the text, but again, I'm going to scale everything up. Where she can use the tentacles to do like juvenile Kraken strength tentacle attacks on the party for the final room. But the party will be able to actually find her brother. I think I named him Sibaroth, which is also from the text, the total package, as a ghost. And I'm going to have to play that out as there's like a protective barrier around this area because, as I've established in the lore in our campaign, all the spirits are being sucked into the Soulmonger in Omu. So there's some kind of protective force field due to Umberlee's presence here or something that's keeping the souls intact. And that will allow me to also use the other followers that survived as probably a Spectre. I think it's Shadows as written in the text, but I'm going to up them to Spectres because it's a little more stronger. And I was thinking, and really the only combat encounters in the text, there are a bunch of Shadows in this throne room. There's the final boss fight, and I think there's like some Bloodhawks in the garden or something, and that's about it. There's not a whole lot of combat. It's actually a lot of traps. There's that Glyph of Warding, as I said, the crab pool. There's a crumbling walkway here. There's a really cool, there's a lightning hallway trap, which is supposed to only go off if the players actually touch the orb at the end. But of course, I'm going to be more devious and have this lightning blast fill the hallway as soon as the players step in here. And then it will slowly recharge basically every time they enter and exit. So they'll have to deal with this lightning trap multiple times, which could be devastating if they end up just, exploring all these different rooms. And then this is a really cool crushing trap you can see right here. There's actually blood that dictates here's where this trap is. And this thing is nasty. How much damage does that do? It's on 18. Crusher trap. It's a DC 13 saving throw. On a success, you can leap out of the way in either direction. On a failed save, you take 8d10 bludgeoning damage. And if you're reduced to 0, you are crushed to a pulp. Yikes. Hopefully Mannix is not caught in there because I don't know how to... maybe I'd allow the players to come up with someone like, can I roll a saving throw to push them out of the way and let them take some damage? Then I would probably allow that to mitigate it. Just to be totally like crushed to death seems nutsoid. But that is kind of the flavoring of this entire campaign as well. A lot of auto-killing traps like that, but that's really neat looking. And I actually put these as tokens so I can literally take this, you can see here, and physically crush the walls together, which I think is going to look really cool. And retract back in, so that's really neat. There's a stone head they can use, which has a secret entrance to get to the back half of the cave. There's a water elemental trapped in the statue. They'll be able to find the actual ghostly brother here, which he'll be able to explain part of the situation to Gillian, as well as finding all of these little ghostly remains. So what I'm hoping is that she'll know the story, maybe even out of order, because what I'd like to do is have her in the throne room actually have the priestess condemning the Triton to death, and he's very upset by that. And then in the bedroom, I will find them together, and the players have to come up with 2 and 2 that was an earlier scene of them kind of in the bed together, and you can tell they're romantically involved. It's kind of some pillow talk or something. And then in the actual cage, they will literally meet the ghost where she... I haven't decided how she actually killed him. Probably be drowning, I would assume. I don't know. Tritons can't... Can Tritons drown? Do they have a... Can they breathe underwater? Is that a thing? How did they actually kill the Triton? Let's see. Amphibious. You can breathe air and water. Yeah. So you can't drown a Triton. So how would a priestess of Umberlee ritualistically execute a Triton? That would be very interesting. Maybe you just put him in a cage that's completely dry and just leave him in there. Like, he eventually dies. Creatures still have to eat. That would be a terrible way to die. God, it's awful. Just lock him up in this cage. So I haven't quite come up with the details for that. But then they get into this cave. Hey, Jerry. I'll probably put some Chewels in here. I don't think there's otherwise... it says there's a Zorn. A random Zorn emerges from a wall and demands food. You have to feed it gold coins or it attacks them. That that seems just completely random given the, it's like, hey, some random earth creature appears. Instead, I would probably have a bunch of Chul maybe come out of the water at certain intervals here in the caves once they detect some kind of other presence, and as well as having Chul with her, which I think is cool because then that dictates the fact that Chuls are pretty strong. I think they're also CR4. I'd have to actually put them in here because I don't think they're in the campaign. And then put them with her in this final boss room. And you can see there's an interesting situation here. The players actually have access to the final room fairly early if they wanted to, which makes me nervous as a DM. But they'd have to... I don't think they can jump this. They don't have any traversal abilities. They'd have to swim across this water, and it's very churning, and I will probably drop some kind of... I don't know, some kind of sea creature in here to like fuck up the players, to where it looks raging, and I'm gonna definitely remind them this is a raging part of the sea, and even if you can swim, you're gonna be battered against these rocks pretty badly. But what's interesting is they'll be able to see. Let's see what they can see across the sea. Okay, that's interesting. So, given my vision cones that I've created, you actually can't see into that final boss room, which is good. But I like this idea if it teases kind of where they need to go and the fact that there's these bat caves. I like that. I don't like giving them straight up access to the final boss room before they've done like the entire second half of this dungeon. So most likely players will try to come up with a way, but hopefully they're going to use this more as like a scouting opportunity rather than a, oh, we need to get over there right now opportunity. Hopefully they don't have any... I don't know what they have. Did they use their balloon packs already? I never keep track of their items in terms of like, do they have potions of flight and all these things that could really fuck me up in terms of getting across somewhere. They do have some water breathing, which could come in handy here, I suppose. Giving them some of those. Lit. It is dark. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'll probably have the specters animate these statues here, probably as the animated armor stat block, and attack them. There's actually a random mimic in the corner here as written. It seems like a little too much and random, but I may actually put mimics in instead of this crate area, which could be really interesting once the players like get through here and they start looting all these crates. Just have like one or two of them just end up being mimics, which could be really fun, and another combat encounter. And I think that would probably be enough of combat in this area. I think there's a octopus creature in this gazebo, and I'm gonna replace that with a roper, and then there'll probably be like a ring of protection or something there that they can loot out there. So that'll be an optional encounter. But forced encounters will be the shadow / animated armors here, and then maybe the mimics here, because this is a central location. They'll have to fight Chuls in the caves. This actually is kind of a lot of combat now that I think about it, and then the final boss fight. But it's a lot of exploration. There's a lot of cool traps. And there's a lot of storytelling. I really want to do fun things with Gillian discovering the fate of her brother, discovering why her temple ship was, why the people on her ship was destroyed, whether or not she actually forgives her brother. He's obviously very remorseful about everything. Maybe I'll make it so he fell in love with her and didn't realize that he used her to, make him more... Not he wasn't really sinister. Maybe he was just unwitting in the fact that she was using their relationship to, murder all of their people or try to. But then he kind of remained by her side because he was just smitten with her, even after everything happened. And he basically will confess that he tried to like turn her towards the side of good, and thought he was making headway for that. They built this grand palace, but then she kept wanting to win Umberlee's favor back. And it was a big conflict for them. And ultimately, he ended up losing the battle for this priestess's favor or soul, I guess, and ended up losing his life over it. And then she did gain her power back, but she ended up being this kind of twisted kraken priest that's essentially has to remain in this palace to Umberlee. And the reason there's ghosts still here is because there's just some bullshit force field around that can keep everybody intact. And then at the end of this, Gillian will receive a special item, and I think I mentioned this last time, but I'm leaning towards actually giving her her brother as like a spirit that can help her. Like she can call upon it her brother's spirit to boost a spell or something cool. So just a neat like personalized item for Gillian. And I want to kind of do that for all the players when they complete their personal quest. This is just the first personal quest completion that we'll see, which is going to be Gillian's with this whole dungeon. We're looking forward to this one. We will not reach this one this week. We're going to finish up Jahaka Anchorage. But after that, assuming the players get Laska Lars and get access to the ship, they should be able to use that ship to get over here and pretty much start this dungeon the week after, pretty much the session after this one. I don't see a whole lot of random encounters occurring, and if they've got the Sturge, which is Laska Lars' ship, I'm trying to think. If they long rest in Jahaka Anchorage, which they probably will, then it's been a day. It's been a day. And then would the Dragon Fang have attacked the Brazen Pegasus? I could, I'm still thinking about creating one more like naval battle the players can engage in, this time with a bigger ship-to-ship combat, and just drive off or destroy the Dragon Fang ship while the Brazen Pegasus has to fight off, the crew on their ship that turned against them. I think that could be interesting, hopefully, and create kind of a closing thread to like, oh yeah, these pirates are totally not going to be loyal to you, by the way. Ortome and that crew is going to be loyal, but you don't have any of the pirate loyalties, and that will teach the players a lesson about allying themselves with pirates. But I think that could still, I'm wary about doing too much of the ship-to-ship battles because we've done 2 full ones already. So I'm less interested in doing that for a third time. But if we could do something like abstract it to where you're literally like firing the mangonel and you're trying to like sink the other ship and you're shooting ballistas off and turn it into more of an actual ship-to-ship combat rather than a just using the ships as a battlefield map and attacking each other from there. I do think that could be interesting, and that could be a way for them to just drive off the Dragon Fang, save the Pegasus, reunite with them, and then they have to decide, do we try and hang on to this ship? Do we try to keep Captain Laska Lars alive? Did they just kill Laska Lars? What is going to go on there? I don't know. As a DM, I don't have any plans for that. I'm just going to leave that up to the players in terms of what they can do. But either way, they should make it to this area next, which I don't think I'm ever actually going to use the name Dangwaru. I think I'm going to call it the Umberly Palace or the Typhoon Palace or something. But this should be a full-on dungeon crawl that should last a couple sessions from there, so I will keep on prepping it for probably the next couple crafting annihilations. I'll have to build some more, a few more character sheets that don't appear in Tomb of Annihilation, like the Chules. So I don't think Chules appear. Choose you. Nope. So I'll be prepping more of this, and that'll be our next dungeon. So that'll be a really fun, bigger dungeon crawl because there's not a whole lot of those in this adventure. And then just real briefly on the future, probably just going to hand wave us through some more water travel because once they defeat the pirates, the seas are a lot friendlier. So I could probably just about hand wave them to Shilku Bay at that point. They could have some obviously role-playing dialogue scenes, but I don't really have any other combat encounters that I necessarily want to do. I always thought it would be interesting to have a dragon, the actual red dragon attack at some point, but I don't know how far the dragon would actually roam away from its actually the mine's down here. Jeez. There's the actual volcano. If the mine entrance is here, then the closest the dragon would be attacking right outside the bay. But even then, that's like 30 and 40 miles away from its lair. I don't think it would go. Supposedly, you can have an encounter with it if it's, in this general area. But I don't know how much a dragon's territory would be. So I haven't quite decided that. But I think that'd be interesting if like they pull up in Shilku Bay and the dragon literally attacks them and they have to like flee or try and shoot it with a ballista or something. That would be that could be really interesting. But otherwise, I just have them arriving in Shilku Bay and then doing the mine and Hrakamar. Also, after the Typhoon Palace, that big dungeon I just showed, they will level up to 6 after that, because they have been 5 for a long ass time, since session 31, and we'll be at session 40 this week. And we've got one more session in Jahaka Anchorage, and at least 2, if not 3 sessions in the Typhoon Palace. So they're going to be level 5 for a long-ass time, and then they'll make level 6 after that, and then they'll be 6 for any kind of encounters I want to have in here, as well as the Mine and Hrakamar, and then we'll probably get them to 7. So weirdly enough, they probably won't be 6 as long as they were at 5. But those are the plans for the future, and I think that will do it for me. Again, Tomb of Annihilation session is going to be tonight, not tomorrow. We're not going to be here at all tomorrow. We're going to do a makeup session. We have conflicting schedules. It is that summertime where everybody's doing vacations and things. So this week's D&D will be tonight, same time, 9 p.m. Central. And then most likely we'll be going Thursday next week as well, or may even have to cancel altogether, but we're certainly not going Friday of next week, so we're going to have a few makeups that we'll have to do. So not going on Friday for this week and next week, and obviously I'll be posting that more on social medias and things, but we are going tonight, so I'll see you all for that. Bye.